Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bald Eagle Podcast. I am Shawn Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. All right, exciting times. We are only a few days away from our first regular season game. We're almost here. Okay, today is Wednesday, September 7th. This is the Bald Eagle Podcast. Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast is a 100% Philadelphia Eagles podcast. So I dedicate every hour, every minute of this podcast to the Philadelphia Eagles. There's something that sets the Bald Eagle Podcast apart from all other podcasts out there, and that is the fact that we have the most in-depth play-by-play analysis by far compared to any other podcast that I'm aware of. I'll make that disclosure. I don't know about all podcasts. There could be some other podcasts out there that does what we do. I doubt it, but we are the only place, to my knowledge, for the most in-depth play-by-play analysis. Now, the Bald Eagle Podcast is part of the Philly Sports Alliance. You'll see to my right that you have a list of some of our shows, and I'll go over those over at the end. But Philly Sports Alliance has a sponsor, and it's La Terrain Watches, and you'll see that scrolling on the bottom there. La Terrain is a unique word, and there's a little dash there in the web address, so you know how to get there. But La Terrain offers or has a lot of watches. I think they have sunglasses, a bunch of accessories for men and women. And if you put this code in there, you'll see it down there. Put this code in PSA, you'll get a discount. So already good prices for quality accessories, but you get an additional discount just for putting in PSA. Okay, now the Bald Eagle Podcast has 3 rules, very important rules to me anyway, and we abide by those rules strictly. First rule, number 1, most important rule, no politics. We won't talk about anything political. I don't care what side you're on, left, right, middle, extreme, either way. Doesn't matter to me. All I care about is football. So that's all we talk about. We don't talk about anything political. I guess you could argue, right, that COVID sort of was political, shouldn't have been, but became political, right? So indirectly, we may have somewhat been political when we talked to COVID, but that was the only exception. And that was only because it impacted the game. I only talk about things that impact the Eagles and or the NFL. I don't talk about my personal information. I also don't talk about the players' personal information. We're not going to do any stories on purchases that the players make, how they feel about things, how they're, the way that they grew up in high school, or I don't care any about that stuff. All I care about is football and their contribution to the Eagles. And then last but not least, I'm not censored. I say whatever the fuck I want. So keep that in mind if you have little ones running around while you're watching this. So I mentioned some of our partners, right? Philly Sports Trip Philly Sports Alliance is the group that I'm with, that I'm part of. But we also have other people that we partner with. Philly Sports Trips, my little slip there, is one of them. We partnered with Philly Sports Trips, and you can go to phillysportstrips.com to see all the trips that they make. But we partnered with them to travel down to Washington, D.C. for our Week 3 game at the Commanders. For, I think, $325, you get a round-trip chartered bus. You get decent tickets, food, drinks, and you get to hang out with some other people that love the Eagles, right? And I believe there are going to be some Philadelphia podcasters on there. I think Hollis Thomas might make an appearance. So a really fun time. If you can get to the link, that's where they're leaving. And you don't have to worry about get somebody to give you a ride to the link, and then you can drink and eat whatever you want and don't have to worry about anything. So that's phillysportstrips.com. Go there to sign up. And when you go to sign up for the Washington game, say that you heard it through Philly Sports Alliance or PSA. That way we all get on the same bus. Getting on the same bus makes things a lot more fun. And there are apparently there are things planned for the ride. So the ride down is going to be fun by itself. Okay, let's get to our countdown. Getting exciting, right? We got 4 days till we start week 1 at Detroit. Now that's not the first game of the NFL for the NFL season. There's a Thursday night game tomorrow night. Is NFL kickoff September 8th. Buffalo is at the LA Rams at 8:20 p.m. So it's going to kick off the season. Probably be a really good game. And then we have our season opener, week 1 at Detroit. That's this Sunday, the 11th at 1 p.m. The next week is our home opener. Week 2 is Monday Night Football at home against the Vikings, September 19th at 8:30. Week 3 is that trip down to Washington to play the Commanders, Sunday, September 25th at 1 p.m. We get to play against good old Carson Wentz. Week 4 at home against Jacksonville, Doug McPherson's return to the Link, Sunday, October 2nd, 1 p.m. Week 5 at Arizona, Sunday, October 9th, 4:25 p.m. Week 6 at home, Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowgirls, October 16th, 8:20 p.m. Week 7 bye. Week 8 at home against Pittsburgh, Sunday, October 30th, 1 p.m. Week 9, Thursday Night Football at Houston. That's November 3rd, 8:15 p.m. Week 10 at home against the Commanders, Monday Night Football, November 14th, 8:15 p.m. Once his return to the Link after we beat him at his house, right? Week 11 at Indianapolis, Sunday, November 20th, 1 p.m. Week 12 at home against Green Bay, Sunday Night Football, November 27th, 8:20 p.m. Week 13 at home against Tennessee, Sunday, December 4th, 1 p.m. Week 14 at the Giants, Sunday, December 11th, 1 p.m. Week 15 at Chicago, Sunday, December 18th, 1 p.m. Week 16 at the Cowgirls, Saturday, December 24th, 4:25 p.m. And then we end up the season 2 home games, Week 17 against the Saints, January 1st, 1 p.m. And then Week 18 against the Giants, still to be determined. It'll be the weekend of the 7th and 8th. So we're starting the season away with an away game. That's the 3rd year in a row we've done that, longest streak since 2011 through 2013. We don't have any back-to-back away games till Week 13. I mentioned that we're closing out the season with a home game. I'm not a fan of our Week 7 bye. It's the earliest one we've had since 2016. And the Cowgirls and the Giants slightly better at a Week 9 bye, and Washington has a Week 14 bye. That I'm a little jealous of. You heard me say a lot, Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. And in fact, all but one anyway of our primetime games is at home, which I think is exciting. But we have five primetime games this year, one of 13 teams that have that many, and that's the most in the NFL. The most we've had since 2018. Now, we're not a stranger to primetime games. Since 2000, we've had 94. So we have the second most in the NFL. First is the Cowgirls. They have 100. Now, speaking of the Cowgirls, we've played them in primetime every year since 2007, with the exception of 2014. When I say primetime, the importance of primetime, you're probably aware, is that it is a nationally televised game, and it's generally the only game that's on. So we didn't play them in primetime in 2014, but we did have a nationally televised game on Thanksgiving. How's it going, Jock Talk? I'm doing well. How are you? I'm excited. I'm excited for the season to start. Strength of schedule, we have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule based on our opponent's winning record the previous year. And in fact, the NFC East has the bottom 4 easiest. We're at 3rd with an opponent winning percentage .464. The Cowgirls in Washington are tied for the easiest at .462. And then the Giants are 4th at .465. The Rams are the hardest at .567. And last but not least, Sunday, February 12th, 2023 is Super Bowl 57, State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. I am hoping we are there. I'm confident that we'll be there. A lot of people think we might be too. It's not just me. And that'd be amazing. I am excited for week 1 as well. All right, let's get to a draft recap. Now, after you heard me say the schedule, right, and now I'm going to the draft recap, which we're a few months away, you're wondering yourself, why do you constantly read all these things in the beginning of all your podcasts? And that's because I have a horrible memory. I wouldn't be able to remember most of these things without repeating them, and I figure repetition is good for me. It probably is good for some people out there, too. maybe you'll remember some of these things because you've heard it so many times on the Bald Eagle podcast. So let's do a draft recap. So this most recent 2022 NFL draft, we had 5 picks and an excellent trade that I bring up. So first round, 13th overall, we selected the defensive tackle Jordan Davis from Georgia, who's having or what I've heard anyway, has had a good training camp in preseason or in those practices. We traded the 18th and 101st overall to Tennessee for wide receiver A.J. Brown, who has not disappointed so far. We'll see what happens when game time comes, but so far he's been doing well. Second round, 51st overall, center Cam Jurgens from Nebraska. Third round, 83rd overall, linebacker Nakobe Dean from Georgia. Sixth round, 181st overall, linebacker Kyron Johnson from Kansas. And sixth round, 198th overall, tight end Grant Calcaterra from SMU. And then we had about 15 or 16 undrafted free agents signed. Only 3 of them stayed with the team. Reed Blankenship, a safety from Middle Tennessee State. Josh Jobe, a corner from Alabama. And Josh Sills, an offensive lineman from Oklahoma State. Now, we've made some changes, some moves over the last few weeks that have affected our future draft picks. So as of today, in 2023, we have 2 first-rounders, a second-rounder, a third-rounder, a fourth-rounder, and 2 seventh-rounders. In 2024, we have 1 first-rounder, 2 second-rounders, a third, 2 fourths. One of those could become a fifth, depending on because it was a conditional from Minnesota, depending on how well Rager does. Another fifth that's ours, and then a sixth. And that sixth is either ours or the Titans, whichever is better. All right, let's get to a little bit of Eagles news. Not a lot going on. Pro Football Talk released their top 10 power rankings. They ranked the Eagles as number 9, which I think is fair. I think we're definitely a top 10 team. The players voted on team captains. On offense is Jason Kelsey, Jalen Hurts, and Lane Johnson. On defense, the captains are Brandon Graham, Darius Slay, and Fletcher Cox. And special teams captain is Jake Elliott. The season opener, I mentioned, versus Detroit. In Detroit, first time, it's sold out. Only standing room tickets are available. That's the first time since 2019 that Detroit has sold out a game and only had standing room tickets left. So whether you feel that that's because of Detroit or because we're coming into town and we are one of the top teams in the league, I like to choose the latter, right? The fact that it's us coming to town. I'm a fan of Auden Tate as well. I don't think that. So we had to get rid of Perrine, and I don't think that was a significant drop to sign Tate. So I'm happy with the Auden Tate signing too. Speaking of the Auden Tate signing, let's go over a couple of roster moves. Now, this happened before last week, so I already talked about it in my podcast, but I didn't have a lot of information because I believe it happened the day of my podcast. So we did sign Saints quarterback Ian Book off of waivers, and we didn't just sign him. We signed him to the 53-man roster. So we didn't just sign him to Chinstrap got cut. Who's Chinstrap? I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know that nickname. But we signed Ian Book to the active roster, the 53-man roster. And I mentioned before his college coach. His quarterback coach, offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, started his coaching career. Yeah. Reed Sinnett got cut. Yeah. Book's college coach started his career on staff with Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen in San Diego with the Chargers. Yeah, Reed Sinnett. Yep. I didn't know that it was a nickname. I missed that. Ian Book was drafted by the Saints in the 4th round, 133rd overall in the 2021 NFL draft. He was from Notre Dame. He's 6 foot, 206 pounds, a little short for my liking. 4.65 40, 32.5 vertical, 115-inch broad jump. He played all 4 years of college at Notre Dame. He was a 2-time captain. He started 3 years that he was there. He completed 728 of his 1,141 attempts, which is 63.8%. For 8,948 yards, 72 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 147, which is pretty good. He left Notre Dame as the winningest quarterback in history with a 30-5 record. In his senior year, he led them to the college football playoffs, where he completed 64.6% of his passes for 2,830 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Not the best completion percentage, but the touchdown to interception ratio, I think, is pretty good. He also added 485 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns to that. So not just an arm, but he also can run. He did lead the Saints in passing this preseason. He completed 64.6% of his passes for 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. So not the best preseason. You figure you're going against second and third stringers, and you complete less than 65% of your passes. That's not amazing. And 2 touchdowns and 2 picks isn't the best either. But he did lead the team in rushing with 121 yards. I don't consider that necessarily a positive, but he did. So he had his NFL debut last year on Week 16 on Monday Night Football against Miami. He completed 12 of his 20 attempts for 60% completion percentage. He had no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 40.6 quarterback rating, and he was sacked 8 times. So I'm not sure what the Eagles saw in him Reed Sinnett was probably not going to do much better than he did in preseason. So they clearly can see more potential in Ian Book. And I think they put more emphasis on his college career than they did on his experience in the NFL. We released safety Anthony Harris. The release was apparently mutually agreed upon between Harris and the Eagles. And the whole reason is that he wanted to sign with another team. So they terminated his practice squad contract. Yeah, he doesn't sound like he looked very good against Miami. 60% isn't horrible, but it's not good either. And 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. Yeah, sacked 8 times. Not a successful game, I wouldn't think. So that's what I mean. I'm assuming that the Eagles are looking more at his college career than they are his little stint in the NFL. Anyway, let's move to we signed corner Mac McCain to the practice squad. He was an undrafted free agent with Denver in 2021. Signed by the Eagles in September 2021, made his NFL debut in Week 3, played 13 special team snaps and a loss to Dallas. We then released him. He is 6 foot 185, runs the 40 and 4.48, which is decent for a corner. 35.5-inch vertical, 123-inch broad jump. Not much else. No, he had those 13 special team snaps, but that's about it. So no more tape on him. We claimed running back Trey Sermon, and we added him to the 53-man roster. He was a third round, 88th overall pick by the 49ers in the 2021 NFL draft. He's from Ohio State, 6 feet 215. So he's a little bigger than what we have in our backfield currently. Runs a 4.6 140, a little slow. But there's also another guy who ran a 4.6 40 who was one of the best in the league. I hate to bring him up because he is a cowgirl, but Emmitt Smith ran a 4.6. Trey Sermon has a 37-inch vertical, which is good, 125-inch broad jump. That's okay. In his rookie year, he played 9 games, starting 2 of those games, had 41 carries for 167 yards, which is a 4.1 average and 1 touchdown. Not horrible. And he had 3 receptions for 26 yards. He began his college career in Oklahoma, and he was teammates with Jalen Hurts. I did. So special teams coach has not been completely transparent about who they're going to have as returners. I don't know why they keep saying Jalen Reagor was the returner or the kicker punt returner, because he was horrible. But yes, I heard that Avonte Maddox's name was in the list of people that were being considered. So Trey Sermon, in 3 seasons at Oklahoma, he started 15 of 37 games he played. He had 339 carries for 2,076 rushing yards, which is a 6.1 average. That's excellent. And he had 22 touchdowns. He also added 36 receptions for 391 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then in 2020, he transferred to Ohio State, played in 8 games, had 116 rushes for 870 yards, which is a 7.5 yard average, and 4 touchdowns. And that's 12 receptions for 95 yards he added to that. So, a bigger back than what we have now, 6 feet, 215. And seems like he plays like that with higher per average rushing average. 7.5 last year, 6.1 in the first 3 seasons at Oklahoma. So that's good. Now, they could both be big running teams, and maybe everybody on their team gets, 6+ carries. But when you think about our backfield with Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and Miles Sanders, I don't think any of them are much over 200 pounds, especially not Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell. So it adds a little bit of size to the running back room. We initially signed running back LaMichael Perrine to the practice squad, but then we released him to add running back Trey Sermon, and we released Reed Sinnott to add cornerback Mac McCain because Sinnott was on the practice squad. We also signed tight end Dalton Keene to the practice squad. He's 6'4", 251 pounds, so he's a big monster at tight end. A little slow, 4'7", 140, 34-inch vertical, which is good for his size. 125-inch broad jump, that's decent. He was drafted in the third round, 101st overall by New England in the 2020 NFL draft. He played 27 games in 3 years at Virginia Tech, had 59 receptions for 748 yards, a 12.7 average, and 8 touchdowns. And he he played in 6 games and had 3 receptions and 16 yards during his rookie season, missed 2021 due to an injury. Big guy. And I'm surprised we got a tight end, though, because I feel like we have some pretty good depth at tight end, but I don't know that we have any tight ends that are that big. Maybe that's the point. And lastly, we signed a wide receiver, Auden Tate, who is Jock Talk's, one of Jock Talk's favorite. He's 6'5", 225, another big wide receiver. A little slow as well, though, 4'6", 840. In the year that he was in the combine, which I think was 2018, his speed, his 4.68 was 14th. 14th percentile in wide receivers, so not very good. His 31-inch vertical, 12% for wide receivers, so not very competitive compared to other wide receivers. But again, he's 6'5", so he's got long arms. He was drafted in the 7th round, 253rd overall in the 2018 NFL draft, drafted by Cincinnati. In 22 games at Florida State, he had 65 receptions for 957 yards, which is a 14.7 average, and 16 touchdowns. And 4 years at Cincinnati, he started 12 of 13 games, 61 receptions on 118 targets for 799 yards, 13.1 average, and 2 touchdowns. So not horrible. A nice addition, I think, to the practice squad, and nice size, 6'5", 225. I think that's my favorite part of him. So technically, they released Perrine to get Auden Tate, and they released Sinnott to get Dalton. I may have misspoke about who they released for who. But at the end, we all know it all kind of comes out, right? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. All right. So let's get to our depth chart. Not much has changed since we went over it the first time. There's a couple of changes, and I don't know that it's full yet. So of course we have three QBs with Ian Book. We got Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew, and Ian Book. We got 4 running backs: Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and now Trey Sermon. 4 wide receivers: A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Zach Pascal. Tight end, we got 3: Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll, and Grant Calcaterra. We got 10 offensive linemen: Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Jason Kelsey, Landon Dickerson, Isaac Seumalo, Cam Jurgens, Jack Driscoll, Sua Opeta, Josh Sills, and then technically Andre Dillard, but he's going to go on. He was put on injured reserve. I did not see that they pulled somebody from the squad or signed anybody to replace him. So I think we're technically at 52 as of today. Jock Talk, maybe you'll know that. If we added a 53rd. Defensive tackle, we have 5: Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, and Marlon Tuipulatu. Outside linebacker, defensive end, we got Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Teron Johnson, Patrick Johnson, and Kyron Johnson. Teron Jackson. And then the 2 Johnsons. I apologize. Inside linebackers, TJ Edward, Kaiser White, Nakobe Dean, and Sean Bradley. Corner, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, Zach McPherson, Josh Jobe, and Josiah Scott. And then at safety, we got 4: Marcus Epps, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Kayvon Wallace, and Reed Blankenship. And last but not least, we got 3 specialists. We got Jake Elliott, the kicker, Aaron Sipas, the punter, and Rick Lovato, the long snapper. So that's actually 52 if you take Andre Dillard out off of injured reserve, which once he's on injured reserve, you can replace him. He doesn't stay on the 53-man roster. But he has to be on that injured reserve for 4 weeks, which is fine because from what I understand, his surgery on the broken forearm is expected to heal in 4 to 6 weeks. So we can keep on the injured reserve for 6 weeks, bring him back to the active roster, and then have him play. But they still have a spot, and I haven't heard who's going to take that spot. We have, I believe, we have our 16-man practice squad from my tally. We have tight end Dalton Keene, who was just added. Wide receiver Auden Tate just added. Safety Andrew Chikari. Corner Mario Goodrich. Wide receiver Devin Allen. Wide receiver Britton Covey, who might make it on the 53-man roster as a return guy, because he was one of the guys that was considered, in addition to Avonte Maddox, as being a returner. Linebacker Christian Ellis, offensive lineman Cameron Tom, offensive lineman Coyote Awasika, running back Kennedy Brooks, wide receiver Deion Kane, tackle LaRaven Clark, defensive end Matt Leo, who technically doesn't count because I think he's an international guy, tight end Noah Togai, defensive tackle Marvin Wilson, cornerback Mark McCain, and we did just re-sign, I believe we just re-signed linebacker Devion Taylor, practice squad. So I would make 17 minus Matt Leo. We got 16 on our squad. So again, I think I think we're at 69 total, 70 total. We can have 71 because of Matt Leo. I don't know who that last guy is going to be. So it'll be interesting to hear before the season starts. Okay, let's get to injury updates. Not a lot to talk about. I mentioned offensive tackle Andre Dillard. On injured reserve following surgery on his broken forearm. He'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks. Miles Sanders, who's had hamstring tightness, was a full participant in practice today. So that's a good positive sign that hopefully he'll play in our season opener against Detroit. Okay, that's all we got for you today. The last short Bald Eagle podcast. Now, I'm not done. We got our Bald Eagle fact to talk about. But before I do, let's talk briefly about another one of our sponsors, right? Or partners, I would say. We have the Philly Sport Alliance and the Painted Lines now stream on each other's Facebook and I think YouTube's. Painted Lines is a podcast podcast group that has a bunch of sports podcasts and other things. So check them out. Check out the Painted Lines on social media. I cannot wait for Sunday either. Jorge or George. Jorge. I don't know how you wanted me to pronounce that, but I can't wait for Sunday either. I can't wait for, honestly, just because I love football so much, I can't wait for tomorrow night to watch a real game that means something. And then even more so, watch the Eagles crush the Lions. It's going to be great. And I'm hopeful that let's all just cross our fingers and hopefully that the offense comes out and drives down the field efficiently. Jalen Hurts doesn't make any significant mistakes. He does well. And our defense does a good job against the run, because I don't think they have a huge. I mean, the receivers have changed significantly over last year, but I don't know that their running off or their passing offense is what I'm most worried about. But we shall see. All right, let's get to the Bald Eagle fact. Now, the Bald Eagle fact, one of my favorite parts of the podcast. I go back into Eagles history, and I go back as far as they go, 1933 when they were created as a team. I talk about each year that they've been in the NFL. I talk about some of their leaders, their rushing leader. We talked about last week, LaShawn McCoy. We've talked about Donovan McNabb as the passing leader. We'll talk about historic NFL drafts and who we drafted and who made it into the Pro Bowl and things like that. Who was an All-Pro. So we go back and we talk about the history of the Eagles. We talk about their greatest games. Right. So this week we're going to talk about the second head coach ever of the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was Bert Bell. So Bert Bell was played college football at University of Pennsylvania from 1914 to 1919. His college career was erratic. He had some great plays, but then threw a bunch of interceptions. I think his college career as a quarterback, he might have been 50-50. I wasn't able to find his stats, but he shared the quarterback duty. So he may have started a game and been pulled halfway through. But in addition to being a quarterback, as you're probably aware back then, he was also a defender. He was a punter and a punt returner. So he didn't just play two ways. He played four ways. He punted, he returned punts, played on offense and defense. So that's not Iron Man. That's, I don't know, whatever would be above an Iron Man. Now, he stepped away from college like a lot of guys did back then, or stepped away from the NFL back then, to serve in the U.S. Army in World War I. As part of a mobile hospital unit and earned a first sergeant rank. I'm not in the military, but that apparently is a big deal. And I am very, very appreciative of anybody that dedicates any time to the armed services. because that's what keeps us free, right? He withdrew from Penn in 1920 without a degree because he had an aversion to attending classes, which I'm sure if there's anybody out there that's in college right now, my daughter is, you might feel that you have an aversion to attending classes. But this guy did so much that he actually didn't graduate. He didn't have a degree. In any case, in 1920, he joined John Heisman's staff at Penn as an assistant coach, where he was well regarded as a good coach. In a few years later, in I think 1924, he declined offers to become a head coach at another university and stayed the assistant coach at Penn. However, in 1928, he did resign from Penn as a coach due to a disagreement with his fellow assistant coach Lud Ray on in-season scrimmages for practice. So he didn't want the team to scrimmage itself during the season for practice. I guess he was concerned about injuries, which would be my guess. I'm assuming he was against it. It didn't actually say. It just said there was a disagreement. The next few years after 1928 and resigning from Penn as a coach, he worked at the Ritz-Carlton in Philadelphia, so he got out of football completely. He tried to be a stockbroker, but he lost $50,000 in the crash of 1929. For some perspective, $50,000 in 1929 would be roughly $790,000 in 2021. Now, this guy, I didn't mention it, but this guy was born into a wealthy family. So his father continued to bail him out of some of these issues. He went back to football in 1930, and for 2 years, he was the backfield coach for the Temple Owls. He stayed there until Pop Warner was hired to coach Temple. For those of you that are younger than me, might not know that Pop Warner isn't just isn't just kids playing football. There was actually a coach named Pop Warner, and he coached the Temple Owls in 1933. Brought in all his own people, so Bert Bell was let go. In 1933, he became the driving force to eliminate Pennsylvania's blue law. The Pennsylvania blue laws, and wasn't just Pennsylvania that had them. There were a bunch of blue laws meant to preserve religion. The law forbade any professional sporting events on Sundays, so you could go to church. So Bert Bell was a major force in eliminating Pennsylvania blue laws, which is what allowed Pennsylvania to have a professional NFL team, since the NFL has, even back then, played all their games on Sundays. After he had those laws rescinded or changed, he partnered with Lud Ray, the guy he had a disagreement with and caused him to leave Penn. He partnered with Lud Ray to purchase the rights to an NFL franchise in Philadelphia, and called them the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, when we were originally called the Eagles, we were not a bird eagle. I believe it was in reference to the Blue Eagles, which I think were a political. I think it was a political thing. It was some political thing was going on, and our colors were actually blue and yellow at the inception in 1934. And I look up because I have all the helmets on a banner right above me. Yeah, I thought this. That's what I added up. I didn't have a chance to see if anybody said anything officially, Jock Talk, but the way I saw it, we can have 71 players, including practice squad. No, I'm sorry, we can have 70. Including practice squad, because Matt Leo doesn't count, because everybody can have 16 players on their squad, and we only have 69. So we'll see who number 53 is. Okay, so let's see. So we got rid of the blue law, so Pennsylvania could play professional sports on Sundays. It's also the same time that the Pittsburgh Steelers were created. So he partnered with Lud Ray, purchased the rights to a franchise in Philadelphia, called them the Philadelphia Eagles. In 1934, a year later, he realized that the Eagles' ability to challenge other teams was difficult, and it made it difficult to sell tickets. He also wasn't able to sign any talented college prospects because he didn't have the money to do that. So he thought to himself, how can I create some fairness in the league for newer teams or weaker teams? So what he did was he invented the NFL draft. He wanted to institute a draft to ensure that the weakest teams had some sort of advantage in signing the best players. So Bert Bell was responsible for inventing the draft. In 1935, his proposal for an NFL draft was accepted. And in 1936, the first ever NFL draft kicked off, and he was master of ceremonies. In the Eagles' first 3 years, him and his partners that owned the Eagles exhausted around $85,000, which adds up to roughly $1.7 million in 2021. So at a public auction, they auctioned off the team. Bert Bell became the sole owner of the Eagles with a bid of $4,500, which is about $88,000 today. So he bought the team for So it's like today buying the Eagles for $88,000, and they're worth almost $5 billion. After suffering even more financial losses, he sold the team and bought a share in the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was an owner of the Steelers from 1940 to 1946. After World War II, he sold his rights to the Pittsburgh Steelers and was elected the NFL commissioner in 1946. And he was the NFL commissioner from 1946 until he died in 1959. He signed his first contract that he signed was a 3-year, $20,000 a year contract. $20,000 was roughly $280,000 currently, so it was a healthy contract. Just to give you some comparison, though, Roger Goodell's current contract is roughly $63.9 million a year. So significant inflation for the commissioner of the NFL between 1946 and 2022. Immediately upon becoming the NFL commissioner, he moderated a settlement to move the Cleveland Rams to LA. Part of that settlement included signing Kenny Washington, who was the first African American to be signed to the NFL, which began the end of racial segregation in the NFL. So he was the impetus to end segregation in the NFL. He began to create schedules in the NFL in 1946, and formerly all the owners would get together and they would all fight about who got to play the weaker teams. So what he did is he had the weak teams play the weak teams early on in the season, and the strong teams face the strong teams early on in the season, so that the standings were as close as possible, and it made the NFL look as more competitive, and that would improve attendance. Later in 1946, after a bunch of these improvements, his contract was elevated to 5 years, $30,000 a season, which is roughly $455,000 today. He added sudden death to the playoffs. He wrote an anti-gambling resolution into the league constitution. So he was a big promoter, or a big I don't know how you. I'm lost for words here for a moment. But he focused a lot on weeding out any gambling in the NFL, specifically the type that would cause people to intentionally change the game. That was his goal, was to try and improve the integrity of the game. He made the names of the officials secret to prevent attempts at insider information or attempts at bribing. Again, more on the lines of anti-gambling. He was the first person to create injury reports and require that teams disclose the health of their players before each game. He signed the NFL's first ever TV contract, which was the 1949 NFL championship game. And let's be honest, if anything has pushed the popularity of the NFL to being the most popular sport in America, the TV rights were it, right? He ended up creating subsequent TV contracts, allowing each team to negotiate rights independently. Now, we don't hear about this a lot because it's so old, and it was only around for a few years, but there was the AAFC. I'm assuming it's the All-American Football Club. What's going on, KFAR? I'm sorry that you're a Lions fan and have had to endure those horrible seasons you have. And with the exception of the first game where we crush you guys, I'm hopeful that you guys have a good season. I want you guys to turn it around. I want you guys to do well. I like the rotation in the NFL. I appreciate that. So back in 1949, the NFL was experiencing competition from AAFC. I'm assuming that's the American All-American Football Club. I should have looked it up, and I apologize. So the AAFC was putting stress on the NFL's wages, causing them to increase them, was pulling some attendance from them. They were marketing as well against the NFL. And in fact, it caused the NFL to have no profit for 3 years in a row. Yeah, I would be happy as a Lions fan with 8 to 9 wins too. I mean, you win a couple extra, or you have some shitty teams in the league, and you might even make the playoffs, right? You might even make the wild card. So the AAFC was cutting into the NFL's profits, made them unprofitable for 3 years, attacked their attendance, their wages, all that stuff. So he merged them. He negotiated with the AFC to merge them with the NFL in 1949, which improved, of course, that put the NFL back onto a positive cash flow situation. Taking out your competition by absorbing them is not a bad idea, right? He created the blackout rule. And I haven't seen this go into effect. It happened all the time when I was a kid. But the blackout rule essentially means that if your local team, say the Philadelphia Eagles, don't sell out their tickets in a game, they can't broadcast it in the immediate area. So it incentivizes people to go to the stadium. Or what had happened, started to become more and more popular when I was younger, was when the Eagles would not sell out, because it happened often, a company would come and buy up the rest of the tickets, and then they'd say, hey, this Eagles being televised, or this game is being televised because of United Healthcare bought the last 5,000 tickets, and now it's not being blacked out. So he created that blackout rule. He created a Pro Bowl to be held at the end of each season to show off the best talent in the NFL. He created rules for announcers, preventing them from criticizing the game and prevented them from televising fights or severe injuries. Now, I think the injury part and the fight part is somewhat subsided, but they try not to. And the whole goal of that was to try and maintain the NFL as a quality league, not full of a bunch of monsters that were willing to break the law and things like that. So they did not glamorize fights, and the announcers were not allowed to criticize the game. He, as the commissioner, he himself formally recognized the NFLPA, which was the first time that had ever happened, and declared he would negotiate with its representatives. Now, that wasn't accepted by all of the owners, but Bert Bell was able to convince the owners to agree to some of the NFLPA's requests, specifically for salary standards and health benefits. So he was the first commissioner, and he chartered and it was partially, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can read, but it was partially part of the reason that he did some of that negotiating with the NFLPA and included them was because that avoided a congressional hearing. They were trying to say that the NFL draft was violated some civil rights acts, and once they included the NFLPA as a union, that kind of avoided all that legal stuff. He extended timeouts from 60 to 90 seconds, not a significant change, but something he did. Mandated TV timeouts in every game, which we might hate, but think about it: without television, the players wouldn't be making nearly what they are, and competition to be in the NFL might not be quite the same. In 1959, as part of the NFLPA stuff, he initiated terms for a pension plan. He had little progress while he was alive, but in 1962, the first player pension plan was approved, and they called it the Bert Bell NFL Retirement Plan. In 1959, he was advised by his doctor to avoid going to football games. He responded, and I quote, "I'd rather die watching football than in my bed with my boots off." On October 11th of 1959, he attended an Eagles-Steelers game at Franklin Field. That was a former home of the Philadelphia Eagles. So both teams that he had been a part of and owner of. The Eagles actually gave him box seats, told him to invite friends and family. Instead, he'd rather buy his own tickets and sit with all the fans. He was sitting at the end of the field near the end zone, and during the fourth quarter, he suffered a fatal heart attack and later died at the hospital, University Hospital, later that day. So this guy, let's think about this for a second. This guy played four ways in the NFL: punter, punt returner, defender, quarterback. Stepped away for a year to serve in the U.S. Army in World War I and got a first sergeant rank. And then when he was told he shouldn't go to football games or he might die, he said, "Fuck you," went to a football game and died at a football game. This guy loved football. And I don't know that that's on my list of ways to die. A heart attack right after the Eagles win their fifth Super Bowl or something crazy like that. More than that by then, but would be an amazing way to go, right? Now, in his career, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Penn Athletics Hall of Fame, the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. He went to school at Haverford, and he was in Haverford's Athletic Hall of Fame. And since 1959, the best NFL player in the year receives the Bert Bell Award. So very instrumental in a lot of things in the NFL. A big part of a lot of changes in the NFL, and the Eagles' second ever head coach. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about some sponsors here. So the last sponsor I'm going to talk about, probably one of our biggest sponsors, Six Pack Coverage. So Six Pack Coverage, just like the Painted Lines, we stream to their stuff, they stream to our stuff. But Six Pack Coverage just doesn't just have sports podcasts. They're a national media company. They're based out of Tennessee, and they have podcasts about everything. Of course, sports, right? They also have fitness, travel, food, finance, entertainment. They sit there and tell you all about movies that came out and TV shows and anything and everything you can think of. They have a podcast for. So and blogs and things like that. So go to the Painted Line. Go to Six Pack Coverage. Check all their stuff out. Do me a favor. Also, let me show you something here. Philly Sports Alliance isn't just football, right? And not just Eagles football. Philly Sports Alliance has a nice round of shows here, a lineup of shows that cover almost every sport you can think of. So Mondays, first thing on Mondays, you have the Football Smack Talk show at 6 p.m. That has Ryan Reese and Eric Ward. That is all NFL. They're both Eagles fans, so they probably spend a little more time on the NFC East than the Eagles, but they will talk about the whole NFL on that show. Later on Monday at 7:30, you have the Diamond Club podcast. That is an all Phillies show featuring John Hunter, Chris Lahiff, and Danny Hart. So we got Phillies and the NFL covered. Tuesdays at 6:30, we have the Philly Broadcast. The Philly Broadcast is a four Philly sports podcast. So they talk about all of the top four Philly sports: Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, and Phillies. And that's again featuring Ryan Reese and Ryan Finneran. Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, you're finding everything you need to know about the Eagles at the Bald Eagle Podcast. Remember, starting next week, this will be your home for the most in-depth play-by-play analysis of our game against Detroit, our win against Detroit. So if you want to find out how people have done, you want to re-listen to the game, I will be going play-by-play and dissecting the win. After my show, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. is Mike Sports. Mike Sports is a football podcast featuring Eric Ward and Jay Landry. They talk about the whole NFL. I mentioned Eric Ward, who's on the Football Smack Talk show, as an Eagles fan, but Jay Landry is a Dallas Cowgirls fan. So they go back and forth pretty well. Thursdays at 5:30 is Tendies on Pattison. Tendies on Pattison is an all-Flyers show featuring Paul Batcho, Jack Griffin, and Chris Lahiff. And last but not least, we have Tables, Ladders, and Chairs on Thursdays at 7 p.m. That is a wrestling podcast featuring Eric Ward and Mike Rouse. Okay, check them all out. Follow Philly Sports Alliance. Follow the Bald Eagle. If you're looking up the Bald Eagle, you have to type in the Bald Eagle podcast. Otherwise, you're going to see actual Bald Eagles. Look up the Philly Sports Alliance. Follow all their socials. Share it with all your friends. When all these shows come on, not only watch them, but share them to your timeline, or share them all to your friends, or instant message them, whatever you need to do to communicate this stuff to your friends, so more people listen and more people are informed by Philly Sports Alliance. Okay, I think I've gone over everything here. Next time we will be talking about the Detroit win. For now, go Birds.